The morning sun fell softly across the tall towers of the city. Cars that hovered above the roads moved like silver birds. People rushed to work, screens flickered on every wall, and voices filled the air. In the middle of all this noise, a small girl named Claire Whitman sat quietly in the back seat of a sleek black car. She was only 10 years old, with bright eyes and a curious look that often made people smile. But today, she was not smiling. She was staring out the window, lost in thoughts that were far older than her little face. For several weeks, Claire had been seeing the same dream. In the dream, a man stood in a long white hall filled with light. He never spoke, but his eyes looked kind and sad at the same time. Every night she woke up whispering the same words. "He's waiting." Her mother, Catherine Whitman, did not pay much attention at first. She was a busy woman with an important job. Catherine was the head of Nova Helix Dynamics, a company known all over the world for its great inventions. People said she was one of the smartest women alive. The president of the country had once called her the mind that might change human history. Nova Helix was working on something called the Ascension Drive. The newspapers said it would be the next step in science, a machine that could change how time and gravity worked. Governments were watching. Rich investors were calling. Everyone wanted Catherine to finish it quickly. To most people, she was a hero, but to herself, she felt like a soldier carrying too much weight. She wanted to do what was right, but right often came with a price. That morning, Catherine's eyes were on her tablet, reading endless messages. Claire sat quietly beside her, swinging her legs and looking out at the world passing by. The sky was bright, and the buildings sparkled like glass mountains. The car stopped at a red light near a big city square. People were crossing the road, holding coffee cups, wearing suits, laughing into phones. It was an ordinary day, or at least it was supposed to be. Suddenly, Claire leaned forward. Her small hand pressed against the glass. "Mom," she said in a quiet voice. "Mom?" Catherine looked up, half distracted. "What is it, honey?" Claire did not answer. She was staring at someone in the crowd. A man, tall and calm, wearing the dark jacket of a Nova Helix engineer. His face was clear this time, clear as daylight, the same calm eyes, the same quiet presence from her dream. He was turning slightly, as if he felt her gaze, but did not look directly at her. She felt her heart beat faster. "Mom," she said again, more urgently. "That's him. That's the man from my dream." Catherine blinked, confused. "What are you talking about, Claire?" Claire turned to face her mother, pale and serious. He's real." The car moved forward as the light changed. The man disappeared into the wave of people. Catherine looked at her daughter and saw fear mixed with wonder in her eyes. She wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as childish imagination. But something about the way Claire's voice trembled stopped her. Catherine prided herself on being logical, but at that moment she felt a strange unease, like a whisper in her mind telling her to pay attention. When they reached the company's main building, reporters were waiting. Cameras flashed as soon as Catherine stepped out. Claire stayed close to her mother, holding her hand tightly. Everyone was asking questions about the upcoming test of the Ascension Drive. "Will it work this time? Is the government funding you again? Can you promise it's safe?" Catherine answered calmly, as always, her smile the same polished mask she had worn for years. But inside her mind was far away. It was on her daughter's frightened voice and the man in the crowd. Later that evening, after meetings and interviews, she sat alone in her office high above the city. Through the glass wall, the skyline glowed with lights. Her reflection in the window looked like that of a queen ruling a kingdom of steel and silence. On her desk were pictures of her and Claire, taken on better days. She touched the edge of one frame softly. Then her phone buzzed. A message appeared from the security department. It contained a list of the new engineers assigned to the final phase of the project. Catherine opened the file without much thought. Her eyes moved down the list, and then she froze. Daniel Carter, Senior Systems Engineer. There was no reason that name should mean anything to her, but something deep inside said otherwise. It was the name her daughter had whispered again and again in her sleep, sometimes through tears, sometimes with a smile. She sat very still, the quiet hum of the city around her. For the first time in many years, Catherine Whitman felt unsure. The air in the room seemed heavier, as though the world had shifted just slightly, waiting for something or someone. with the wind away at us out when I went and when sin after when we're at when till we would and when we when sat and then with that when at without of the sif pipeline so where we've went since at on first a man named Daniel Carter walked past a glowing door, unaware that a child had seen him before he had ever truly arrived. The next day, Catherine could not stop thinking about the name she had seen in the report, Daniel Carter. It ran through her mind again and again, like a quiet drumbeat she could not silence. She told herself it was only a coincidence, but something deeper whispered that it was not. Still, she had a company to run, and there was no time for strange feelings. The test of the Ascension Drive was only weeks away, and everything depended on it working. When she arrived at Nova Helix Tower that morning, the building felt different. Walked through those halls 1,000 times before. But today, every step made a small echo that seemed louder than usual. People greeted her politely, not noticing her distraction. She signed papers, gave instructions, attended meetings, but all the while, she was waiting for one name to appear again. Late in the afternoon, her assistant told her that one of the new engineers had arrived to begin system checks on the main control network. His name was Daniel Carter. "Send him in," she said, trying to sound calm. When the door opened, the man from the crowd walked in. For a moment, the air felt still. He looked exactly as Claire had described and exactly as Catherine had seen from the car window. He was in his mid-30s, tall but not imposing, with calm eyes and the steady air of someone who paid attention to small details. There was nothing extraordinary about his clothes or his face, yet something about him made people quiet. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said with a respectful nod. "I've been assigned to the Ascension Drive Diagnostics. I wanted to introduce myself." Catherine studied his face carefully. She half expected to see a clue, something that might explain why her daughter had dreamed of him. But he was just an engineer, polite and professional. "Welcome to Nova Helix," she replied. "I hope you're ready for busy days. We have a lot of work to finish before the demonstration." "I've been following the project since the first prototype," he said, smiling slightly. "It's an honor to be part of it." There was sincerity in his tone, not excitement, but something quieter, as though he already knew what the machine could do. His gaze rested on the glass window behind her desk, which showed the shining heart of the city below. "Have we met before?" Catherine asked suddenly. Daniel looked at her thoughtful. "I don't believe so," he said. "Though I did work on earlier stages of the project in Nevada a few years ago. Maybe our records crossed?" She nodded, pretending not to be bothered. After a short talk about technical details, he left her office. But the moment the door closed, she opened her computer again and searched for his name in the company archives. His file appeared without any warning signs. The record showed he was an experienced engineer with strong credentials, yet something made her scroll further down. In old reports from a prototype test 2 years ago, there was a note about an accident. Systems engineer named Daniel Carter had been officially listed as missing. She read the line twice, then 3 times. It was the same name, the same employee number. How could that be? Catherine whispered. The file said the case had been closed after search teams found nothing. But now the man was standing in her office, as if nothing had happened. Her heart began to race. Or she closed the file quickly and leaned back in her chair, trying to breathe normally. That evening, when she went home, Claire was sitting on the living room floor, drawing in her sketchbook. The television played softly in the background. When Catherine entered, the girl looked up with a bright smile. "Mom, guess what?" she said. "The man from my dream was in my schoolyard today. He was looking at the sky like he was remembering something, and then he smiled at me." Catherine's throat tightened. "Are you sure, Claire?" "Yes," Claire said. "He waved, but then he walked away before anyone else saw him. It was him. I know it." Catherine sat beside her daughter and touched her hair gently. She did not want to frighten her, but inside she could feel a chill creeping up her spine. Daniel Carter was not supposed to exist. Now, both she and her daughter had seen him in 2 different places. That night, long after Claire went to bed, Catherine sat by the window of her room. The city lights below blinked like stars trapped in glass. She tried to reason through it. Maybe it was a man who looked like the one missing years ago. Maybe the old record was mistaken. Maybe Claire's dreams had just matched by chance. But deep inside, she did not believe any of that. Something connected Daniel to her project. Something far larger than she could understand. She picked up her phone and called the head of security. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Run a background check on Daniel Carter, she said. I want to know everything. Where he's been, who he spoke to, what he's done for the last 2 years. When she hung up, she looked once more out the window. A shadow passed under a streetlight far below, moving easily through the night. She could not tell if it was her imagination, but for an instant she thought the shape paused and turned its face upward, toward her office window. Catherine closed the curtains. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and test schedules, but Catherine could not focus on any of it. Every time she looked at the control screens of the Ascension Drive, she thought about Daniel Carter. He moved through the building quietly, checking machines, giving orders to technicians, always calm and polite. No one else found anything strange about him. To the team, he was just another engineer doing his job well. Only Catherine knew there was a question hiding behind his quiet smile. Her request for a background check had gone out 2 nights earlier. She waited for the report, telling herself that once she had the facts, she could return to normal. She told herself this often, but it never felt true. That morning, she noticed the door of the lab half open. Inside, Daniel was standing alone before the humming core of the Ascension Drive, the machine that could turn gravity into light. It floated within its shell of glass and metal, soft blue light pulsing around it like the beat of a heart. Catherine watched from the doorway. Daniel was looking at the drive as though he had known it all his life. When he sensed her presence, he turned and smiled, not startled at all. "Good morning, Catherine," he said. "You were part of the early design, weren't you?" she asked, walking in. "I was," he said. In a way, there was a strange calm in his voice. He walked closer to the machine, hands behind his back, eyes filled with thought. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "You've taken it further than we ever imagined." "We," she said, surprised. "You talk as if you were there for every step." Daniel looked at her. "Sometimes it feels like I was. Maybe in another time, another place." It was a simple answer, but it made her uneasy. He never said things directly, yet everything he said left her with more questions. Just then, her phone rang. It was her security chief. "Ma'am, we finished the background check you requested," the voice said. "You might want to sit down." Catherine turned slightly away from Daniel, lowering her voice. "Go on. There is something impossible here," the chief said. "The records we have for Daniel Carter show he was marked missing 2 years ago during the prototype test at the Nevada site. You already know that part. But listen, there are no continuous records of his life after that. No hospital visits, no transactions, nothing. Then, 2 weeks ago, his file and identity reappeared in the national database, as if they had been restored by hand. We have no trace of who or what updated them." Catherine's mouth went dry. She ended the call slowly and turned back. Daniel was watching her with quiet understanding, as though he already knew what she had learned. "You vanished 2 years ago," she said. "Why are you here now?" Daniel sighed. "Because something was broken, Catherine, and it has to be fixed." "Broken," she repeated. "What are you talking about?" "The last test of the prototype," he said softly. "You think it failed? It didn't. It worked in a way none of us expected. I was there when it happened. The machine opened for a fraction of a second, long enough for the flow of time around it to split. I was pulled through that gap. When I opened my eyes again, the world had moved forward 2 years. Catherine stared at him. "That's impossible." "It should be," Daniel said, "but the Ascension Drive makes impossible things happen. Your work did it. You set this in motion." She walked closer, anger rising under her confusion. "You expect me to believe you've traveled through time, Daniel? You think I'm a fool?" "I think you already believe it," he said, his gaze steady. "You just don't want to admit it. Your daughter dreams of me, doesn't she? She sees images that have not happened yet. She remembers what hasn't come to pass. Her heart skipped once." "How do you know about my daughter?" "Because she's part of this," he said quietly. "She is connected to the frequency of the drive. Children feel things that adults forget how to feel. Through her, the machine is speaking back to you." Catherine felt dizzy. It was too strange to make sense, yet his voice held no hint of madness. It was calm, certain, like someone reading a truth carved in stone. She took a deep breath and turned away. "I don't know what game you're playing," she said. "But if you think you can threaten me with stories, you're wrong. Tomorrow, this machine will run, and when it does, we'll see exactly what science can do." Daniel did not argue. He simply nodded, a faint sadness in his eyes. "Yes," he said. "We will see." That night, Catherine dreamed for the first time in years. She was standing in a long white corridor, the same one Claire had described. The air shimmered like liquid glass. At the far end stood her daughter, older, wearing a white coat like an engineer's. Beside her stood Daniel, his hand resting gently on a small console that glowed with the blue pulse of the Ascension drive. When Catherine reached for them, everything dissolved into light. She woke with her heart racing. In the pale light of dawn, she whispered to no one, "What have I built?" The morning after the dream, Catherine felt uneasy. She had spent her life believing in numbers, logic, and proof were not part of her world. But the image of her daughter standing beside Daniel in that glowing corridor would not leave her mind. She tried to push it away as she dressed and prepared for the day, but the feeling of something hidden, waiting to be discovered, stayed with her. When she reached Nova Hillock's tower, the usual buzz of workers and machines filled the air. Engineers rushed through glass hallways carrying tablets and tools. The sound of soft humming came from the core chamber where the Ascension drive rested. It was almost ready. They would begin final tests that evening. The whole world was waiting for this moment. Catherine stepped into the control room and saw Daniel standing near the main console. He looked calm, his hands resting on the edge of the table, eyes focused on the bright readings flowing across the displays. "Good morning," she said after a pause. "Good morning," he replied, turning toward her. His tone was gentle but serious. "Glad you came early." She folded her arms. "I wanted to make sure everything is running correctly. The world will be watching when we begin." Daniel nodded. "Yes. But there's something more important than what they see." Catherine frowned. "What do you mean by that?" He looked at the machine's shining core. "Catherine, this machine is not only a tool, it changes how time moves, how choices connect. When you start it, reality follows whichever pattern you choose at that moment." "That sounds poetic," she said, trying to hide her unease. "But this is science, Daniel. You call it reality. I call it data." Daniel looked at her sadly, as if he knew she was hiding behind her own confidence. "You saw something last night, didn't you?" Catherine's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "The corridor of light," he said quietly. "You dreamed of it." She froze. He stepped closer, not in a threatening way, but with the patience of someone who understood too much. "When the prototype opened 2 years ago," he said, "that corridor was real. You made it real. I saw it before I fell through. It linked to what we might become one day. But when I came back, something was broken. The drive lost balance." Time began to echo. "Your daughter was born into that echo? She can feel what others can't?" Catherine turned away, her voice sharp. "Stop saying these things. Claire is a little girl. She's not part of your story." "She's already part of it," Daniel said softly. "You think she's dreaming of me? You think she's seeing what is coming? The machine is speaking through her because she is close to you, and you built it with your own heart. The connection runs through your family now." Catherine pressed her hands over her eyes. None of this made sense, but deep down, it felt too true to ignore. "If what you're saying is real," she whispered, "then what happens when we start the drive again?" Daniel's eyes lowered. "Then the broken thread will tighten. Future might survive, but your daughter may not. The paradox will try to correct itself. It chooses one path, not both." Catherine felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "No, there must be another way. That's why I came back," he said, "to help you find it." Before she could answer, her assistant rushed in with a report. "Ma'am, the final synchronization update is ready. We're on schedule for the evening test." Catherine nodded, hiding her shaking hands. Daniel listened quietly. When the assistant left, he said, "You still have a choice. The test doesn't need to destroy anyone." She looked at him with hard eyes. "You expect me to cancel everything?" "Billions of people are waiting. Governments, investors. My work feeds whole nations. You want me to throw that away for a dream? I'm asking you to decide what kind of future you want," he said. "It's a kind built on loss or one built on courage." His calm tone made her want to shout, but she couldn't. She could only stand there, silent, as his words sank deep. That night, she went home late. Claire was asleep in her room. The soft hum of the city came through the window. Catherine watched her daughter for a long time. Claire looked peaceful, but her fingers twitched slightly, as if she were touching something invisible in her dream. "Mom," Claire murmured suddenly, eyes still closed, "you have to choose soon." Catherine felt tears rush to her eyes. She whispered, "I know, sweetheart." The next morning, the world would gather to watch the birth of a new era. But for Catherine, the question was no longer about success or failure. It was about time, love, and a machine that had started to understand both. And somewhere deep within Nova Helix Tower, Daniel Carter stared at the glowing core of the Ascension Drive. Its blue light shimmered across his face like water. He closed his eyes and said under his breath, "It's almost time." The morning of the test arrived, bright and clear. The sky over the city looked clean, the streets empty, except for security vehicles. The news screens across the world showed one message again and again. The final test of the Ascension Drive would begin at midnight. People said it would change history. Some called it the greatest hope for humankind. Others whispered it might go wrong. Inside Nova Helix Tower, the air felt heavy. Everyone moved quickly, voices low, faces pale from long nights without rest. Catherine walked through the hall in her white lab coat. Her eyes were sharp but tired. She had made her decision, though no one else knew what it was yet. Claire stayed in her private room at the top of the building. She had begged her mother to stay home, but Catherine could not bear to leave her alone. Something told her Claire needed to be close tonight. As the evening turned dark, Daniel entered the main control chamber. He looked calm but focused. Catherine was waiting beside the large glass wall that looked down into the heart of the machine. The Ascension Drive glowed faint blue. Power units hummed like a deep heartbeat. "Everything is ready," Daniel said quietly. "Once we start the sequence, there's no going back." Catherine nodded. "I know." She looked at him for a long moment. "You told me I had a choice. I've made it. I will not lose my daughter, but I will not destroy this project either. There must be a way to keep both alive." Daniel's eyes softened. "That's the answer I hoped you would find." He stepped toward the console, his hands moving smoothly over the screens. "There is one way, but it's dangerous. The machine must link two frequencies at once, one from the core and one from a living mind. If they blend right, time will close the wound instead of tearing it wider." Catherine's breath caught. "A living mind? What do you mean?" "Someone must connect directly," Daniel said. "Only you or Claire can do it. The machine listens to both of you." Catherine stared at him. "You're asking me to risk my life? I'm asking you to trust that humanity can be more than frightened of what it creates," he said gently. She looked through the window at the glowing core. The blue light spread across the room, reflecting in her eyes. Then she turned to Daniel. "Guide me," she said. In the viewing room above, engineers worked nervously. The countdown began. Cameras streamed to every corner of the world. People watched from homes, streets, and hospitals. Humanity waited. At 0 hour, the room filled with a deep, steady hum. The drive came alive, spinning beams of pale light across the walls. It was beautiful, like standing inside the sky itself. Catherine placed her hand on the control surface. The light bent around her, wrapping her hand in a blue glow. Daniel stood beside her, adjusting the sequence to match her pulse. Suddenly, the floor shook. The machines roared louder. The energy readings climbed too fast. Engineers shouted warnings through their headsets. "It's overloading," one cried. Daniel's voice cut through the panic. "Stay calm. Catherine, hold your focus. Don't let go. I can't hold it long," she gasped. The floor trembled under her feet. Sparks danced through the air. Claire burst into the room just then, calling out, "Mom." She ran forward, her eyes wide with fear, but shining with a strange understanding. "Let me help." Catherine turned. "Claire, no." But Claire stepped beside her and pressed her small hand on the console next to her mother's. Instantly, the light steadied. The wild humming softened to a single pure note that filled the room like music. Daniel looked at them both. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Now," he said. The room filled with light so bright that everyone covered their eyes. In that light, Catherine saw images rushing past, cities rising higher than clouds, oceans glittering silver, generations of people looking up at the stars. She saw herself older, holding Claire's hand under a sky of radiant blue. When the brightness faded, the room stood silent. The hum had stopped. The ascension drive was still, its core pulsing softly like a heartbeat at rest. Daniel was gone. Only his badge lay on the floor, its metal edge warm to the touch. Claire stood beside her mother, breathing slowly. She looked up, smiling faintly. "We did it, Mom." Catherine knelt and pulled her close, holding her tight. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they were tears of relief, not fear. Outside, the city lights flickered and then glowed brighter than ever. Across the world, people watched their screens in wonder. News anchors spoke of a shimmer in the air, a faint blue wave that passed silently across the sky. Machines calmed, power grids stabilized, storms faded. Catherine looked through the glass wall at the horizon. The world looked the same, yet she knew it had changed forever. In the morning, they would tell the world it was a success. But deep in her heart, Catherine knew something greater had happened. Humanity had looked into the heart of its own power and chosen to protect, not destroy. She placed her hand on the console, feeling its gentle warmth. "Thank you, Daniel," she whispered. And as the first light of dawn touched the city, Catherine Whitman watched a new future begin.